The flagship did not feel hostile, which unsettled Adrian more than open threat ever could. The corridors were too wide, the lighting too calm, the hum of the engines too evenly balanced, as if the ship itself were quietly judging him for his posture. Every step echoed with ceremonial intent, and every alien official he passed pretended not to stare at the lone human walking toward the center of an empire that had never needed one. He reminded himself he was here to negotiate, not to survive an ambush, though the two often blurred together in his line of work. His implant translated the ambient language into something politely neutral, which was reassuring until he remembered it could not translate tone. Tone, he suspected, was where he would die. The throne chamber was not shaped like a throne chamber at all. No dramatic elevation, no looming symbols of conquest. Instead, the room curved inward, like a listening ear, focusing attention toward a single figure standing, rather than sitting, as if refusing the comfort of authority. Queen Kyla watched him approach with an expression that made his training manuals feel suddenly fictional. She looked human at a glance, which was a dangerous illusion. Her long ears swept back with regal restraint, and her blue skin reflected the chamber's light with a soft, almost serene glow. Her hair was pale, braided with precision that suggested patience rather than vanity. Her eyes rested on him with the unsettling calm of someone who had never needed to hurry a decision. Adrian bowed slightly, then hesitated, then bowed a bit more, realizing too late he might be inventing new forms of disrespect. "On behalf of Earth," he said, "I bring greetings, peaceful intent, and a sincere hope that neither of us regrets today." A ripple of quiet murmurs passed through the chamber. Kayla tilted her head, studying him. "You hope regret is optional," she said evenly. "Yes," Adrian replied. "On Earth we consider it a lifestyle choice." That earned him nothing resembling a smile, but the silence softened, which he counted as progress. Negotiations followed, measured and precise, filled with phrases that sounded cooperative but carried sharp edges. Trade corridors, defensive alignments, mutual misunderstandings that could accidentally escalate into fleet movements. Adrian spoke carefully, juggling sincerity and caution like fragile orbs in low gravity. The tension thickened when a senior advisor questioned Earth's reliability. Adrian felt the room closing in, diplomatic gravity increasing. His mouth moved before his brain approved the motion. "Your Majesty," he said, attempting levity like a man attempting to defuse a bomb with a joke book. "If alliances were judged by beauty alone, Earth would already be lining up proposals. You would make a very beautiful wife by our standards." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, heavy, complete. Adrian realized, slowly and painfully, that humor had failed to translate. Kayla's eyes did not widen. Her posture did not change. She simply nodded once, a small, deliberate motion that echoed louder than any alarm. "Then it is accepted," she said. "Let it be recorded that the alliance shall be sealed accordingly." Adrian laughed, a short, reflexive sound. "That was a joke," he added quickly, gesturing with both hands as if waving away gravity itself. "A human idiom. We cope with stress by saying unwise things." Kayla regarded him thoughtfully. "We cope with uncertainty by binding it," she replied. "You offered. I accepted." The murmurs returned, louder now, layered with something like approval. Adrian felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Somewhere in the galaxy, a treaty had just been written in ink he could not erase. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Your Majesty, on Earth, marriage involves consent after reflection, not during tense negotiations." Kayla's gaze softened, just barely. "Then reflect," she said. "You will find I have already consented." She gestured, and attendants stepped forward, already adjusting protocols, already moving him to her side as if this had always been the plan. As Adrian was guided into position beside the Queen, he realized two things at once. The joke had become law, and standing next to her felt far less like captivity than it should have. Kayla glanced at him again, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "You humans have a strange way of proposing," she said, "but I find it efficient." Adrian swallowed. "Give me time," he muttered. "I'll find a stranger one." For the first time, her expression shifted, not into a smile, but into something dangerously close to amusement. Adrian discovered very quickly that accidental engagements came with an itinerary. By the time he woke from a restless sleep cycle, his wrist console was already flashing with notifications labeled politely but ominously as preparatory obligations. He stared at them while sitting on the edge of a bed that was too comfortable for a diplomatic crisis, wondering which part of his life had derailed first: his career, his sanity, or his understanding of humor as a universal language. An attendant arrived before he could decide. The being bowed with flawless timing and informed him that Queen Kayla would require his presence for the morning sequence. Adrian considered asking what that meant, then remembered that every time he asked for clarification, the answer seemed to involve more witnesses. He followed, trying to look composed while internally rehearsing various explanations he could send to Earth, none of which would survive a committee meeting. The corridors felt different now. People watched him openly, some with curiosity, some with approval, a few with expressions that suggested he had personally offended generations of tradition simply by existing. Kyla was already present when he entered the chamber, designated for what the translator optimistically labeled mutual orientation. She stood near a projection of star maps that shifted slowly, entire systems glowing and fading as if breathing. She acknowledged him with a nod that felt less formal than before. "You did not attempt escape," she said. "I considered it," Adrian replied. "Then I remembered I don't know which airlocks lead outside and which led to embarrassment." "That is wise," she said. "Embarrassment is permanent." They stood side by side, close enough that Adrian became acutely aware of how often people passed by, how many glances lingered. He lowered his voice. "Your Majesty, I want to be very clear. On Earth, people usually date before marriage." Kayla turned her head slightly. "Explain date." "It's a prolonged assessment phase," Adrian said. "Two individuals spend time together to determine compatibility, often involving food, sometimes regrettable dancing." She seemed to consider this. "You assess compatibility after binding?" she asked. "Before," he corrected. "Ideally," Kayla's brow furrowed, just a touch. "That seems inefficient. What if one invests time and discovers incompatibility?" "Then you stop," Adrian said. "Emotionally bruised but free." "Free," she repeated. "And alone." Adrian shrugged. "Also common." Silence stretched, not hostile, but thoughtful. Then Kayla gestured toward the shifting star map. "Our alliances are chosen to prevent loneliness at a civilizational scale," she said. "Perhaps your joke was more insightful than you intended." Adrian sighed. "That's what I was afraid of." The day unfolded with relentless precision. Wherever Kayla went, Adrian was placed beside her, close enough to imply unity, far enough to avoid scandal. Advisors spoke to him as if he were already part of the structure, correcting his posture, instructing him when to remain silent, which turned out to be most of the time. During a brief pause, Adrian leaned toward her. "Is there any version of this where we tell everyone I was joking and pretend I fainted?" She tilted her head. "Fainting would be interpreted as weakness. Weakness would require protection." "That sounds worse," he admitted. Later, as they walked through a transparent corridor overlooking the stars, Kayla slowed her pace. "You are uncomfortable," she said. "Yes," Adrian replied immediately. "Professionally, socially, existentially." She regarded him sidelong. "You make sounds when nervous," she observed. "Small jokes, self-directed insults." "It's a defense mechanism," he said. "If I make fun of myself first, others feel less need to." Kayla stopped walking. He stopped too, aware of how many eyes followed even this pause. "On my world," she said quietly, "humor is shared only in trust." Adrian blinked. "Then I've been very trusting?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps you are brave." He laughed softly despite himself. "I assure you, bravery had nothing to do with it." She resumed walking, and he followed, realizing something had shifted. Not the situation. That was still catastrophically absurd. But the space between them felt less rigid, less ceremonial. As the cycle ended, Kayla dismissed the court with a gesture and turned to him once more. "Tomorrow," she said, "you will explain human affection." Adrian groaned. That's going to require diagrams. She paused, then said, almost dryly, I will tolerate no regrettable dancing. He smiled before he could stop himself. By the third cycle, Adrian had learned that privacy aboard the flagship was not something one possessed, but something one negotiated, usually unsuccessfully. Even his thoughts felt monitored, as if the ship itself were politely listening, filing observations under categories like diplomatic asset and unintentional catalyst. He was escorted to Kayla's presence again, though escort had become a generous term. No one grabbed him. No one rushed him. They simply appeared wherever he went, guiding him with subtle shifts in formation, the way gravity guides dust. Resistance, he suspected, would be noted. Kayla stood near a wide observation plane where the stars bent slightly at the edges, distorted by the flagship's mass shadow drive. She did not look at him immediately. Your world transmits stories across space, she said. We have reviewed them. Adrian felt a slow, creeping dread. All of them? He asked. Enough, she replied. He exhaled. That narrows it down to the embarrassing ones. She turned then, studying him. Your stories are filled with chosen bonds, she said. Individuals defying expectation, sacrificing certainty. We romanticize chaos, Adrian said. It helps us sleep. Does it? She asked. Sometimes, he said. Other times we invent blankets with better insulation. A faint curve touched her mouth, gone almost before he registered it. She gestured for him to walk with her, and they moved along the corridor as the stars slid past, silent witnesses to an arrangement no one fully understood. You have not attempted to retract your offer, she said. I've considered drafting a formal apology, Adrian replied, possibly with flowers. Flowers, she repeated. Are these weapons? Only emotionally, he said. She seemed to accept this. You are watched, she said simply. By my court, by yours. Every pause between us is interpreted. I notice, Adrian said. Yesterday someone analyzed the distance between our steps. The conclusion? She asked. That I walk nervously, he said, which I could have told them for free. They stopped near a junction where the corridor split, one path leading deeper into the ship, the other toward private quarters reserved for royalty. Kayla did not move immediately. On my world, she said, a queen does not stand undecided in public. Adrian glanced around. Are we in public? Always, she replied. He hesitated, then spoke carefully. Kayla, he said, omitting the title without asking permission, I don't know your customs well enough to pretend confidence, but I don't want to be a symbol you regret choosing. She studied him, long ears angling slightly back, a sign he was beginning to recognize as thought rather than displeasure. I did not choose lightly, she said. I chose efficiently. That's comforting, Adrian said weakly. She stepped closer, not touching, but enough that the space between them felt deliberate. You joke to deflect fear, she said, yet you remain. I've run from enough things to know when it won't help, he said. Besides, I'm curious. About what? She asked. About whether this was strategy, he said, or something closer to hope. The words seemed to linger between them. Hope. Kayla looked past him, at the stars bending under engineered physics. Hope, she said slowly, is considered a volatile resource. On Earth, Adrian said, we consider it renewable, poorly managed but abundant. That earned him a quiet sound from her, not laughter, but something adjacent, softer. You destabilize expected outcomes, she said. I've been told that, he replied, usually right before meetings go badly. A chime sounded, subtle but insistent. Advisors waited at a respectful distance, pretending not to listen. Kyla straightened, the queen returning like armor settling into place. You will attend the council assembly, she said, at my side. Adrian grimaced. That's the room with the aggressive seating arrangement? Yes, she said. Remain calm. Speak only if addressed. That's my strongest skill, he lied. As they walked together, he felt the weight of observation press down. Yet something else steadied him. Not confidence, not certainty, but the strange sense that beneath the spectacle, beneath the politics and the accidental vow, two individuals were cautiously, humorously, learning how not to retreat. When they entered the assembly chamber, Kayla's voice carried clear and controlled. Adrian stood beside her, hands clasped, mind racing, heart oddly steady. For the first time since the joke had escaped his mouth, he did not wish he could take it back. That realization frightened him far more than any treaty ever could. By the time the fourth cycle began, Adrian realized the ship had adjusted to him. Doors opened a fraction of a second earlier. Translation latency shortened, as if the system had grown tired of correcting his tone. Even the ambient lighting in shared corridors softened when he walked beside Kayla, a subtle environmental concession that made him uneasy. He suspected the flagship optimized for probability, and he was now a variable it no longer considered temporary. The council chamber was louder than before, not in volume, but in intent. Words carried weight here, layered with meaning, cross-referenced by artificial minds that track loyalty patterns across centuries. Adrian took his place beside Kayla, aware that his position had shifted again, not behind, not merely adjacent, directly aligned. An advisor spoke at length about precedent, another spoke about risk, a third spoke about optics, a concept Adrian found strangely comforting in its familiarity. Kayla listened without interruption, her expression serene, her long ears angled just enough to signal attention without submission. When it was over, she rose. The chamber fell silent instantly. "The union is not weakness," she said. "It is adaptation." The word rippled outward, analyzed, contested internally by 1,000 silent systems. Adrian felt every eye turned to him. He resisted the urge to wave. They were dismissed moments later, and only when the doors sealed behind them did Adrian let out the breath he had been holding. "I think," he said, "that room shaved years off my life expectancy." "You measure existence in years," Kayla replied. "I measure it in stability." "That explains why you look so calm," he said. "I'm operating entirely on sarcasm and caffeine." They walked, slower now, through a corridor that curved along the ship's outer hull. Beyond the transparent alloy, a gas giant rolled beneath them, its storms luminous and endless. Adrian gestured vaguely at it. "If this goes badly," he said, "I'm blaming that planet." She regarded the view. "Blame is inefficient," she said, "but humans seem attached to it." "Tradition," he replied. They stopped where the corridor widened, an architectural pause clearly designed for reflection. Kayla turned to him, the formality easing from her posture. "There are those who would prefer you removed," she said, quietly. Adrian blinked. "Removed as in reassigned?" "As in absent," she clarified. He nodded slowly. "I appreciate the honesty." "I prevented it," she continued, "by insisting you remain visible." "That's your solution?" he asked. "More attention?" "Yes," she said. "It complicates treachery." He laughed despite himself. "On Earth, that logic usually ends with a scandal." "Scandal is survivable," she said. "Erasure is not." They stood there, the hum of the ship steady beneath their feet. Adrian folded his arms. "Kyla," he said carefully, "if at any point this stops being your choice, I want to know." She studied him, searching not for deception, but for consistency. "You assume I would not recognize that moment myself," she said. "I assume power makes self-recognition harder," he replied. "Trust me, we've tested that theory extensively." A pause, then she inclined her head. "If I reach that moment," she said, "I will tell you." "That's all I ask," he said. An alert flickered across both their consoles. A procedural anomaly, a human delegation requesting immediate clarification on marital intent. Adrian groaned softly. "They found out," he said. "I was hoping for at least another cycle." Kyla regarded the message. "They are concerned." "They always are," Adrian said. "It's how they show affection." She turned to him with something close to curiosity. "Explain," he considered. "We worry," he said, "excessively. About each other, about outcomes, about whether jokes will become legally binding." Her eyes held his. "On my world," she said, "affection is demonstrated through continuity, through remaining." "Well," Adrian said, gesturing vaguely at himself, "I'm still here." "Yes," she agreed. "You are." They began walking again, closer now, their pace unconsciously synchronized. As they passed a group of officers, Adrian leaned in slightly. "If anyone asks," he murmured, "I'm here for the excellent star views." "I will inform them," Kayla said evenly, "that you are here because you destabilized my expectations." "High praise," he said. She did not deny it. Later, alone only in the technical sense, Kayla paused before entering her private sector. "Tomorrow," she said, "the court will expect a declaration." Adrian stiffened. "From me?" "From us," she corrected. He nodded slowly, humor retreating just enough to reveal sincerity beneath. "Then I should prepare something honest," he said. "That would be appropriate," she replied. As she turned away, he realized that somewhere between strategy and survival, between humor and fear, something irreversible was taking shape. And for once, he did not feel compelled to joke it away. By the final cycle, the ship no longer felt like a court suspended in metal and gravity. It felt like a place where a decision had been waiting to be spoken aloud. Adrian noticed this first in himself. His thoughts no longer raced ahead in panic. They arranged themselves slower, steadier, as if he had finally accepted that some outcomes could not be joked into retreat. The declaration chamber was smaller than he expected. No grand audience, no dramatic elevation, just Kayla, a ring of senior observers, and the ship's central intelligence projecting a soft lattice of light that recorded intent as carefully as words. Adrian stood beside her, close enough that he could sense her presence without looking, a constant calm he had grown accustomed to. He cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he said, "I would like it officially noted that this all started because I failed to keep my mouth shut." A faint ripple of amusement moved through the observers. Kayla turned her head slightly. "Your inability to remain silent," she said, "has been consequential." "I prefer influential," Adrian replied. "It sounds less like an incident report." She allowed a small pause before speaking again. "You were offered release," she said formally now. "You may still withdraw. No retaliation, no loss of standing. The alliance would be restructured." Adrian nodded. He had rehearsed this moment endlessly, alone, with the stars as unwilling witnesses. He thought of Earth's committees, of diplomatic protocols, of how easily he could return to a life where humor was safe again. Then he thought of the questions Kayla asked when no one else listened, of how she learned his jokes not as weapons but as signals, of how she had made space for him to remain visible rather than erased. "I've spent most of my career," he said slowly, "trying to minimize damage, avoid escalation, say the least risky thing. This is the first time I've realized that avoiding risk can be its own kind of failure." Kayla faced him fully now, her long ears angled back, attentive, unguarded. "You choose to remain," she said. "I choose to stay," Adrian corrected. "Not because of treaties, not because of pressure, but because somewhere between panic and protocol, I stopped feeling like a visitor." Silence followed, deep and complete. The ship's intelligence processed, confirming consistency, intent, and improbably high emotional coherence. A soft chime sounded, binding accepted. Kayla exhaled, a sound so quiet it was almost private. "Then it is settled," she said, freely. Adrian smiled, a real one this time, unshielded by sarcasm. "I should warn you," he said, lowering his voice, "this means you're marrying into a species that debates for recreation." "I am aware," she replied. "I have reviewed your transmissions. My condolences." After the chamber cleared, they walked together without escort for the first time, the ship's systems discreetly rerouting traffic to grant them something resembling solitude. Stars slid past the hull, vast and indifferent, and for once Adrian did not feel dwarfed by them. "You have changed," Kayla said. He considered. "I think I've learned when not to joke," he said, "which may be tragic." "Do not abandon it entirely," she replied. "It reminds you that fear does not own you." He glanced at her. "You know, on Earth, this is the part where people ask if they're ready." "And are you?" she asked. He nodded. "Not in the way manuals describe," he said, "but in a way that feels honest." She stopped walking and faced him. No court, no observers, just two figures framed by the slow turn of galaxies. "Then so am I," she said. The alliance was announced hours later, not as a conquest or a compromise, but as a choice. Earth's response was chaotic, full of debate and disbelief, exactly as expected. The alien court adjusted more quietly, traditions bending rather than breaking. The ship charted a new course, one that included both worlds without erasing either. Adrian stood beside Kayla on the observation deck, watching the stars shift as the flagship entered transit. "So," he said, "beautiful wife?" She regarded him calmly.